Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha, and this evening I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pre-order nonsense and the ever-present desire of larger games developers and publishers to gamify those systems in order to better take advantage of gamers as often as possible. If you all recall, Deus Ex: Mankind Divided trotted out this naked display of greed and avarice by way of the Augment Your Pre-Order, a system of tiered pre-order rewards designed to directly incentivize people not only to pre-order the game, but to get their friends and family to do the same. This sort of thing is about as corporate and anti-consumer as one can possibly get, and it was met with such a massive wave of distaste from gamers that I had hoped that these companies would have simply accepted it for being the terrible idea that it is, and let the idea simply die, but apparently it would seem that no one gave Bandai Namco the message, as it would appear that they are doing this exact thing with Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet. Now, first off, I do have to say that I do completely object to the idea of pre-orders on general principle, as well as for several very specific reasons as well, and I object even more strongly to the idea of a gamified system of pre-order rewards. That said, this system is nowhere near as predatory as what Square Enix and Eidos Montreal presented us with the Augment Your Pre-Order nonsense. I mean, let's look at the differences between the two and you'll see exactly what I mean. In the Deus Ex pre-order, Tier 1, we had a choice between the Intruder Pack, the Enforcer Pack, or the Classic Pack, which were skin packs and arms loadouts. Okay, what does Sword Art Online give us for their Tier 1s? Well, the Sword Art Online pack, which consists of the Kirito SAO costume, the Asuna SAO costume, and the Silver Assault Rifle. Alright, not quite as much there as the Augment Your Pre-Order and no ability to customize your augmentation, but nothing out of the ordinary. Well, let's take a look at the second tier. Deus Ex offered for its second tier a choice between a digital art book and a digital OST sampler, where Sword Art Online offers us more of the same as its first tier with a Kirito ALO costume, an Asuna ALO costume, and a gold assault rifle. So skins so far, basically. Nothing really too wrong with that, I suppose. Now let's take a look at Deus Ex's third tier reward, an extra in-game mission. Now that was one of the two main aspects of this pre-order nonsense that I really despised, where they would take actual game content and lock it behind their pre-order tiered system, leaving you having to hope that there are enough people out there ready and willing to buy a game sight unseen, hoping it doesn't completely suck, just so you don't have a portion of the game ripped out and locked behind a gamified paywall. And what does Sword Art Online have for its Tier 3 reward? A mode or other portion of the game that has been ripped out and locked behind a gamified paywall. Okay, it probably isn't exactly like that, and most likely this is an additional chapter or some form of expansion or DLC that will be provided to people once Bandai Namco hit a level of income where they know the game's sales will warrant the expenditure, much in the same way as we see with Kickstarter tiered stretch goals. However, this is not a Kickstarter game. Tiered pre-orders like this are the company's way of telling you that you'll get even more content if you're willing to make a roll of the dice and gamble that the game might not be a rangy dumpster fire. And while this isn't too bad, all things considered, it's still bad for several reasons. The first being mainly that pre-orders shouldn't even be a thing to begin with, especially in scenarios like this, where the game is being released on Steam, which is literally a digital distribution site. There is no need to be concerned about reserving a copy. You know you're going to be able to buy the game. The only reason that one might have to pre-order a game under those circumstances would be if they might not have the money to buy the game later. The only reasons for pre-ordering games now, in most instances, aside what I just mentioned, are completely artificial and contrived solely at the hands of the developers or publishers of the games in order to attempt to get as many people to buy their games before the reviews come out. And I know there's going to be any number of people that will simply say that it's fine, because with platforms like Steam, you have 2 hours of playtime and 14 days with which to refund the game, and they're right. The ability to do that is a strong motivator for some people to not show as much concern over their purchases, and in situations like these, that's sort of the point. I want to call everyone's attention to a little something called the endowment effect, and no, that isn't some sort of double entendre. It's a legitimate psychological phenomenon that describes that we people have a tendency to ascribe more value to an item simply through the mere aspect of our ownership of that item. And borrowing from that principle is the aspect that while there are a lot of people that will have no trouble whatsoever refunding the game if it isn't to their liking, there are enough people out there that won't to make these sort of pre-order schemes worthwhile. In order to avoid the majority of those returns from happening, the developers only need to be able to put out a game that manages to avoid being a complete dumpster fire. For an example, say we have one game that is a complete dumpster fire. I'm talking Mindjack or Ride to Hell Retribution levels of badness. Now, in that instance, most people that pre-order the game that were able would most likely seek a refund. That one is fairly easy to understand and to quantify, but what if it's not a complete dumpster fire? What if it's just exceptionally mediocre, like painfully average on every level? Say you have a game in that scenario, one that you didn't hate, but that you didn't really care all that much for, and you most likely won't ever pick it up or play it again. In that instance, if you had waited for the reviews, there are chances that you might not have even bought the game to begin with. But now, here you are with this pre-ordered game that you've played an hour into, and you're not really caring for it all that much. The endowment effect leads us to consider that for at least some people out there, they might not even bother returning the game because they have it now and they might justify its continued ownership to themselves. Whether it be internal bargaining that the game might get patched later, or at least the character models were decent, or the graphics were okay, or, this aspect or that aspect really wasn't all that bad, or any other number of factors, there are some people that will try to find the good in the game in order to justify their purchase to themselves over a game that, had they waited for the reviews, they might not have even bought, instead of going for the refund like some others might. And again, I want to stress that there's nothing wrong with that, and please don't misunderstand me. This isn't some attempt to turn this into some sort of predatory conspiracy that Bandai Namco are doing this just so they can squeeze money out of a game that they know is going to be mediocre and not well received. No, this is merely just a small attempt to partially explain the how and the why that pre-orders like these continue to exist. That said, gamifying pre-orders is still not something that should be condoned or accepted, but I don't think there's any real reason for people to sharpen their pitchforks and threaten to burn down Bandai Namco's castle. No, this is one of those instances where I would recommend people just simply ignore the game. Don't buy the pre-order, don't even buy the game either. I'm already seeing people saying in the game's Steam discussions that they are speaking with their wallets and aren't buying the game until it's released. And I'm glad that those people will at least refrain from pre-ordering the game. However, that means that they will still get your money in the end, and as a result, they will have no incentive whatsoever to modify their behavior and actions to a more consumer-friendly position in the future. Now, this sort of thing should not be encouraged or promoted. If they do manage to turn something like this into a success, then much like what we've seen with microtransactions and loot boxes, we will continue to see progressively more predatory attempts. It is the nature of the industry, and one that we can avoid now if enough people can be warned to simply stay away from these actions. But as always, please do let me know what you think down in the comments below. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha, and I'll see you next time. If you like what I do on this channel and would like to see the channel go full-time, consider donating on Patreon or PayPal, as well as hitting that subscribe button and following me on social media. Links to everything are in the description down below.